Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Happy Halloween. We're going to be talking about the full moon in Taurus II today. I hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon. We're going to be going on a deep dive with all of the lunar significations. Yes, I'm recording this on Halloween, maybe the precursor to Samhain, which I think is scheduled for tomorrow, the time when the veil is thinnest between worlds. We're going to explore all of it today. We're going to talk about the sun in the second decan of Scorpio. We're going to be talking about the moon in the second decan of Taurus, their rulers, Venus and Mars. And then we're going to unfold all of the astrology that's going to be coming in the weeks ahead, which is significant. November is going to be a little bit of a wild ride. And this full moon is going to kick a lot of that off. So stick around. Let me know that you're here in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. Let me know what you're dressed up as for Halloween. I asked Tanya today, I was like, what am I dressed up as? What should I tell people I'm dressed up as? And they're like, tell them you're the gifted kid, right? Like, and they're like, well, when people ask you, what are you dressed up as? And what are you supposed to be? And she said, I was supposed to be so many things. I thought that was pretty funny as someone who has gone through different levels of expectations in their life. Sorry. So that's what I'm dressed up as a gifted kid trying to live up to expectations. Okay. Jokes aside, I hope that you're doing well today. Javier is Stefan. What's up, Javier? Nice to see you. You're doing well over there, joining us from Ontario. Go Blue Jays. I'm rooting for the Blue Jays. Hopefully the Jays will come away with that World Series. I really hate the Dodgers with like every fiber of my being. They represent everything that's wrong with baseball economics. And I hope that Canada gets the win. So there you go. What else? I got a few announcements before we dive in here, friends. Please let me know that you're stopping in if you're in the chat with us today. Of course, we're talking about the full moon in Taurus too. First of all, you can join me over at spencermichaud.com if you would like to sign up for a reading, or if you would like to reach out for the store as well. I've got a webinar store where I'm selling all of these wonderful pre-recorded webinars, but go to spencermichaud.com, click on the book now button, schedule a reading, schedule a transit reading, schedule a mythologically based, tarot based, fixed star based, decan based mythos reading, which is a natal chart reading. There's all sorts of cool stuff there. There is things where you can learn astrology, where you can sign up for tutoring sessions, etc. Of course, we talked about the store. You can go over to the store and find all these pre-recorded webinars. If you want to deep dive into the decans, I have a decan series. If you want to learn about dignity and devotion with the 7 traditional planets, me and my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo, teamed up for a beautiful webinar series where we teach you how to craft a magical practice around the 7 traditional planets, how to do elections, how to create altar spaces, talked about all the planets and the different dignities and how to remediate challenging chart placements. So go check those out at the store at spencermichaud.com. Now, the Third Coast Mojo that I just mentioned, my beautiful partner Tanya's Etsy account, is having a huge sale off of her custom blends, 50% off her custom oils, where she will look at your natal chart and help you to craft an oil that is based on your specific chart, which is super cool. And that is 50% off, a great value. Go over to Etsy, check out all the cool stuff that she has over there. There's all sorts of new things coming around out for the holiday season. They make great gifts for people as well. And if you want to know when new stuff is coming out, not only from me, but from Third Coast Mojo, you can sign up for the newsletter. And if you do that, you'll know when we're going to be going live. You'll know when new stuff is coming out for Third Coast Mojo, when new planetary things are happening in the sky. And, you know, there's an update for when we go live on this channel. So you should be subscribed to the channel with the notification bell on. Okay. Make sure you like the video as well. But the newsletter, you also get an update. Say, hey, you know what? We're going live right now. And you can join in and you'll never miss another one. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here today, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron over there of the channel. It really helps us to keep the lights on. You all have been so generous with your resources, and I appreciate you. And if you want to keep the lights on over here, keep us doing this work, that's a great way to support the channel. All right, friends. Got a few more people stopping in. Got a few more people. Javier says, "Is that the last game? The Jays against the Dodgers? It's the World Series. It's the last series. I think they're tied right now, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Maybe the Jays are up. We'll see. Again, rooting for Canada on this one." Stellar Rendition is here. Hi, Spencer and Javier. Nice to see you. Stellar Rendition. How everything is going well your way, my friend. Robin is here. Says, "Hey, Spencer and crew, I'm going to dress up as a witch today," which is fitting. I will post a picture on our Discord. I love it, Robin. And Robin, happy belated birthday to you. It was Robin's birthday this week. So hope you're having a great birthday week and everyone's treating you well. All right. Yes, I love that. Nice witch costume, right? Oh, well, Javier, you got to tell us what you're dressing up as, right? And you got a little, I think you got a little one too. You got to take them out trick or treating, right? I don't know. Does Canada do Halloween the same way? I have no idea what the cross cultural things are. All right, friends, we're gonna be talking about this full moon in Taurus, okay? And this full moon is going to be on November the 5th at 13 degrees of Taurus. And it is close to a fixed star called Menkar. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Menkar today. Menkar is the mouth of the whale in the constellation Cetus, which is the whale constellation. It's not like, the Free Willy whales of modern culture. It's whales in ancient cultures were like these mysterious monsters that were, swallowing people up like Jonah, etc. So this one might be, maybe we're feeling like we're getting swallowed up with the zeitgeist. That fixed star talks a lot about tuning into sort of the collective unconscious. So there might be some themes associated with that with this full moon. But let's just bring this chart up and we'll just start breaking it down piece by piece. Okay. So here we've got this chart. And here's our full moon in Taurus. And we have the sun hanging out 13 degrees of Scorpio, the moon at 13 degrees of Taurus. They are, of course, in opposition with one another. So full moons are always oppositions between the sun and the moon. The moon is the collector of light. The sun is the radiator of that light. So we always want to break down both the sun significations and the moon significations when we're going through new and full moons, because we have a divine intention that's coming to us through the sun. But we're going to see how it's going to be balanced out into a body on this physical plane through the themes of the moon. We're also going to be seeing this sun being hosted by Mars in Sagittarius and the moon being hosted by Venus in Libra. So we'll break those down as well. So here are the relationships that we look at. In Hellenistic or traditional astrology, one branch of traditional astrology, Hellenistic astrology is, we like to think about guest-host relationships. And basically what that means is the ancients thought of these planets as deities, as gods. And each of these signs were a temple or a land or that they were stewards of, that they were responsible for. And when a planet or a deity is visiting someone else's temple, that planet, in this case Venus for the moon, is responsible for providing resources and significations for the planet. So Venus is responsible for the moon in this chart. Mars is responsible for the sun in this chart. Now, a little bit of a challenging relationship between those planets because neither one of them is making a traditional aspect to the sun or the moon. So they're both in blind spots. They're having difficulty providing those resources. Now, there is something called like ingirding for the moon and Venus, which means that when a planet, Venus, is hosting another planet that's in one of her own signs, in this case Taurus, there's sort of a secret line of communication between those two planets. So there may be some behind the scenes resources that we aren't necessarily seeing as visible, but are still supporting us in this full moon experience. So we'll break that down too. So let's start with the sun in Scorpio. I'm just going to check in here. We've got a few more friends stopping in. I want to welcome in here. MCB is here. What's up, MCB? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well, my friend. K Wow is joining us. Says good afternoon. Nice to see you, K Wow. All right, all right, all right. Javier is thinking about staying in because it's cold with the crazy wind. Can't blame you. Can't blame you, right? Stellar Rendition says, not dressing up today, but dealing with major tooth pain as Uranus opposes my moon. Oh, that sounds painful. I'm sorry to hear about that. Hang in there with that. I don't know if I have any specific recommendations for that. I know sometimes turmeric was a sort of a little bit of a remedy for tooth pain. Maybe like a turmeric paste on there. Just something that I've heard in the past. All right. Javier says, I'll go, if I go, I'll put on some ears and I'm a bear. Well, there you go. Doing the least and then you can be the most, right? I love it. Efficiency for the win. Okay. So let's talk about the sun in Scorpio too. So let's remove all of this stuff and we will bring up the Deccan flash card associated with Scorpio 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the tarot card associated with this 10-degree section of the zodiac, which in this case is the Six of Cups. We're going to talk about the spirit in this decan, which is Leto. Okay. Book T and Book of Thoth call this card the Lord of Pleasure. Austin Coppock talks about mutual distillation for Scorpio 2. So the conscious actions that we're trying to work through, feelings, impulses, are potentially nostalgic. Susie Chang talks about this card as a sepia tone photograph. It is a solar-ruled decan in a Mars-ruled sign. We may be feeling the pain of return, the pain of nostalgia, of looking back on something that needs to be released in our life. We may be feeling kind of a little bit misty about what we need to let go of in Scorpio season. In that first decan, we had identified something that was like had outlived its vitality, its form had been spent. In the second decan, we may be revisiting it to be able to squeeze the essence and the juice out of it so that we can finally release it into the past and move forward with liberation into our future. But when we're going through that process of return, it can be a little painful. Like this week, I had been dumping about 10 years of photographs and videos off of my phone onto my external hard drive in good preparation for Mercury retrograde, right? I'd gotten some signals in the first few days leading up to this. I dropped my phone a couple times and I was like, oh shit, I better back this up because if I drop this phone and it breaks, that losing 10 years worth of something would be pretty painful. But I was seeing a lot of things from my past, a lot of people that have passed on in my life. And it was both bitter. It was bittersweet, right? It was beautiful seeing their faces and seeing their energy and their essence, but also it's not a permanent return. It's gleaning that essence. It's learning something from that return, from revisiting that, maybe realizing something different in the moment than when you were experiencing it. I had a beautiful video of my mom, who is now passed on, who was dancing with my beautiful daughter when she was very young, like maybe 8 or 9 years old. And we were on a vacation, and it was New Year's Eve. And I'm the type that is sort of embarrassed to do silly things in public. Like dancing is something I feel like embarrassed to do. And just looking back on that time, I remember what I was feeling. I was excited to see them so happy, but I was feeling embarrassed myself that I didn't really want to have people looking at me or something. And looking back on it in the past, now from this perspective, as that my daughter has grown up and my mom has passed on, might have made a different choice in that moment, might have gotten over it and just enjoyed that moment and had a moment of just a reckless abandon with them if I had to do it all over again. And those moments can be really instructive because there may be a time in our life where we face a similar situation where maybe we have a hang up about something and it's stopping us from enjoying that moment with someone we care about. And the essence that we glean from remembering that painful time can help teach us about a different choice that we might make moving forward into the future. So not taking anything for granted. The Scorpio 2 can help us with that, help us understand that these moments that we have are fleeting and that they are valuable and that we shouldn't take anything for granted. So this is something where we're probably going to be feeling that revisiting of something from our past, but we need to balance that out with some of the Taurus energy that I'll talk about in a minute here. Let's see. Cosmic Passport says ground pepper with coconut oil is great for a toothache. Old Ayurvedic remedy. Okay, good. I like it. We'll group think this one for our friend experiencing a toothache. Thank you for that recommendation. Nice to see you here in the chat. Javier says, there we go. Fitting card for the day. We will bundle like that little girl for the card. Yeah. So this is something, Javier, like maybe in this moment, the weather's not so super good. We might not be feeling good, but to think about the transitoriness of life and maybe the fact that these moments that you're sharing with your beautiful daughter are fleeting. Maybe that'll give you the strength and courage to go out and make that memory with someone so that you have something to look back on. Sometimes even when like we experience like shitty weather and it's cold, sometimes that makes for the best memories because you're like, remember that one year where it was super rainy and cold and everyone was miserable, but man, we were together, we were sticking it out. Sometimes that can be a really beautiful moment. So yeah. Amir says, wait, the story you just told about your mom, did you say that was a dream or it happened? No, that was a real thing that happened, Javier. This was me reviewing a bunch of pictures and videos that I was dumping onto my computer this week. And just recognizing a moment where I saw my mom and my daughter just enjoying themselves in the moment. And I remember how I felt in that moment, which was, I didn't want, I was like, I don't dance, I'm not going to do this. I'll videotape it, but maybe in the past I would have, if I would have known how things were going to go, maybe I would have made a different choice in that moment, right? MCB says, I am fine today. Thanks. I hope everyone goes well too. I had strong emotions this week. Be grateful for the lessons. Anyway, I'm listening, about to prepare a plate for the living and for the dead. I love it. This is a beautiful time as we approach Samhain. You might see it spelled phonetically as Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. We make offerings to the dead, right? We make offerings to our ancestors. We remember the people that have passed on. This is part of the tradition of Halloween, dressing up so that we sort of, trick the spirits on some level. And we make offerings to the dead and with altar spaces and whatnot, and honor those that have come before us. So I think it's a beautiful time to do those things. Devin is here. What's up, Devin? Says this was my card for the day. Scorpio 2, 6 of Cups. Oh my goodness. So maybe there's something that you're returning to as well, my friend. I know, Devin's gone through some changes in his family and things of that nature. So we're all processing these transitory, fleeting relationships as we go forward. Javier says, I will take your advice, Spencer. Good. Just enjoy that time with your special person. It doesn't last forever. And being a parent's hard. There are hard parts and hard times, but Javier, I'm going to tell you, Halloween, watching your little kid get joy with going out, dressing up and getting candy and all those things, those are the good times. Don't pass up those. Those are the times that get you through some of the other much more difficult ones. So man, get out there and just enjoy it. Just soak up every moment, friend. Yeah. I hear you about looking silly or getting embarrassed type of thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's a fleeting emotion, right? And being able to have courage to just do things that are outside of our comfort zone and whatnot, man, you don't want to look back in your life and be like, man, I wish I had taken a risk, or I wish I hadn't been too afraid to just go out and just be myself, right? Yeah. Okay, so the sun in Scorpio 2, I think we've broken that down to a certain degree. We've got the sun's going to be approaching a fixed star called Zubin el-Janubi. It's not super close to that, but a couple themes before we move forward. Emotional intimacy, distilling essence out of form, nostalgia, shining light within the darkness. Susie Chang calls it the golden hour, sort of that setting sun. It also represents a chemical transformation. So here's some questions for the sun that you can meditate on for this part of the full moon. Is the combination that you are in healthy or toxic? Austin Comic talks about mutual distillation, about coming together with somebody and exchanging either poisons or beneficial resources. So think about what kind of things are we influencing each other towards. Some friendships and relationships, we can be making meaningful exchanges, beneficial exchanges. In other ones, we may be having influences in our life that aren't necessarily healthy that we might want to sever from. Is giving and receiving balanced? This is going to be a theme that we see with the moon as well. How can you distill experience back into essence? Okay, like how can you take that experience? I shared a memory of my mom and my daughter, and by revisiting it, I distilled the lesson I needed to learn from that. I don't need to go back to that time and live that time over and over and over again. But what I do need to do is learn what I can from that experience, is to take joy in that moment and take that into the future and say, I can make a better choice, or one that I might not look back on with regret. We could say that I lived fully in these future moments, right? What wants to be born under duress? That's an interesting one that is based on Leto, the daimon or spirit associated with Scorpio 2. Leto was a mother of Artemis and Apollo who was relentlessly pursued by a serpent or a python that Hera, the wife of Zeus, sent after her to punish her, basically, for being the paramour of her husband Zeus. She was not allowed to have any safe harbor. Eventually, she was able to give birth on an island that had previously been her sister. So her sister like jumped off a cliff, turned into an island, and became the support system for her, right? So there may be something that you're feeling pressure under, like you're pursued by something, but maybe you give birth to something beautiful under that stress and that pressure. Other questions to ask yourself: Are you holding on to the past? Are you looking at something and glamorizing it in a way that is maybe not realistic? Sometimes we look back on things and we only think about the good things associated with that time, and we forget about all the challenges surrounding it. And that can be difficult too. That can lead us into a path of trying to rebirth something or to recapture an old form that probably wasn't right for us, or because it has already fallen away, right? And then finally, are these memories that you're revisiting, are they bringing you pleasure, or are they bringing you pain? I mean, sometimes we can't avoid the pain. Like sometimes we're just going to have memories and there's going to be some painful remembrances, but you don't want to get stuck in those memories. I know a lot of clients I've worked with Scorpio 2, sometimes they get stuck in the memory and they're trying to live their life based on a past form that isn't really vital anymore. And that can lead to future pain. So how do we let go of what needs to be let go of and liberate that energy so it can find a new form? And those to me are the most important scorpionic energetic questions. Now, that fixed star I was telling you about, Zubin el-Janubi, is one of the pans in the constellation Libra. And it was also used to be an ancient claw. Like the constellations of Libra and Scorpio used to be one giant constellation. And this one was called, Zubin actually means claw, okay? So this particular fixed star is a part of a pair of fixed stars. One is referring to insufficient price, Zubin el-Janubi. The other, Zubin el-Shamali, is getting our due, a fairness, in fairness, right? So when we have insufficient price, we might not be getting exactly what we deserve from the labors that we're putting out there. It is a fixed star associated with social justice and reform, but also receiving potentially a punishment that is kind of merciless. It's associated with paying your dues, with a justice that is kind of unfair. So there may be a circumstance we're experiencing out in the world that isn't necessarily fair. Maybe we didn't earn the experience, but we still have to kind of deal with it. And as we move forward into this full moon, Mercury is going to be under duress in this week. It's going to be moving into malefic enclosure. It's going to be stationing retrograde. It's in its exile. We will talk about that a little bit, but the Mercury part of this may be moving us towards an experience of an unjust punishment. But we'll help you work through that, okay? Okay, so we're going to move forward and we're going to talk about the host of the sun here, okay? Let's see. Just looking here. Javier is asking, how come all the flowers are facing forward but one? It's a good question. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the representative of looking back to the past, uh, revisiting something. That could be part of it. Is it just reinforcing the notion of revisit of the past? Well, there you go. Like the girl turning away or the guard walking away? Potentially. I think that is a good instinct, right? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about its host, Mars, right? And in the chart, let's bring the chart back up. Oops. Mars is going to be making an opposition to Uranus. So we just went through the Mercury-Uranus opposition as I'm recording this, the last few days. When the full moon comes, we're going to be getting a Mars-Uranus opposition. Some potentially, we might be dealing with some unexpected news this week that feels, that maybe lights a fire under us on some level. When we talk about Mars here, the first decan of Sagittarius is associated with the 8 of Wands. Excuse me, and this card has some significations with rashness, with speed, with moving quickly, with messages being delivered very quickly, okay? And one of the things that we have to be careful of when we have planets moving through this decan is moving too quickly or making rash decisions, especially with our communications with Mercury, because Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde, right? It's going to be backing up. We're going to have to revisit some of the things that if we take action too quickly, we're going to have to revisit them. Now, with Mars making its opposition to Uranus, we have to be extra careful to slow down, right? We don't want to move so quickly that we create accidents for ourselves. Mars is a planet that brings misfortune. It brings accidents. It brings illnesses. And when we have Mars opposing Uranus, through our rash actions, through our desire to move forward, when maybe we've gotten some news that's destabilizing, we want to move forward really quickly. We want to resolve the uncertainty. Sometimes when we have unexpected events that happen in our lives, we are experiencing a sense of uncertainty and we feel uncomfortable in that. We want to resolve it. But oftentimes what we have to do is wait for more information to unfold. Sometimes we have to wait for a cycle to unfold. Sometimes what seems like a really challenging experience can be a blessing in disguise. It can be the first action that can lead to a transformation. Remember, we are in the year of the Chinese year of the snake. Oftentimes, when we're going through periods like this, and when we're going through Scorpio periods, which is related to serpents and symbols of serpents, we are often seeing our eyes cloud over before the skin of the snake is shed. But we might feel constricted in our situation and we have to kind of wriggle our way out. Our eyes will cloud over. We might not be able to see what's in the future. But there is a faith involved with shedding that old skin. There is a need to sort of take that leap and to have faith within the process. So I think that what Mars might be experiencing here as the host of the sun, now keep in mind, it's an aversion. It's not able to communicate with the sun through its preferred aspectual relationship. There is no liking girding as well, with Mars being in the same sign of one that it rules, okay? Like Venus and the moon here. So we may want to move quickly, but we may not see the direction that we're supposed to head yet. And again, we might feel this electrical charge, this lightning bolt of wanting to move fast. But I do think it's very, very important to take a deep breath, to slow down, to recognize that Mars is putting pressure on Mercury in this chart, all the while Saturn is making an aspect to the other side of Mercury. This is called a malefic enclosure. So Mars is on one side, and Saturn is casting its ray on the other side of Mercury. So starting around the 3rd, we're going to probably be feeling stuck, right? Maybe the shock that we had, we want to move forward, we want to do research, we want to make changes in our life, but The process of that shedding of the skin has to play out over time. Okay. We might be wanting to find a new form. Okay. When we release old forms during Scorpio season and during these grand water trines, right? We've probably been asked to release old forms that have been past their prime for quite some time. Maybe we glamorize the old form with the third decan of Scorpio, but the way to do that decan properly is not to keep sustaining the situation that is making us uncomfortable or miserable or unhappy. It's to return it back to the earth. And sometimes that is a lengthy process, not an immediate one. So a long-winded way of saying, try not to make a painful situation worse by moving too quickly. Let the process unfold. Learn about patience through this. This is the balancing force of the moon in Taurus, is learning that we need to do as much as we need to do for that time period, and then let the natural process take care of the rest of it. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So let's talk about that moon. So we've got the moon at 13 degrees of Taurus here, you can see. And it's conjoining a fixed star called Menkar. Talk about that in a second. But let's look at the decan flashcard associated with Taurus II. And I'll check back in with everybody here. Mercury's hitting people's charts. Oh my goodness. Right? Let's see. Javier says, I used to love watching my snake peel, the beauty of nature. Yeah, and that's another thing to consider with Scorpio 3. It's a Venus-ruled decan. So the beauty of letting go, the beauty of decay, the beauty of shedding the skin, appreciating it rather than fearing it could be something that we're working through here. Says, yes, patience. I always wanted to help her, but you got to let them do it on their own. No wonder my daughter and I have been so itchy. There you go, right? So yes, if we're experiencing this through someone we care about, if they're going through the shedding of the skin, we might do some damage by interfering, right? That snake is teaching you something, Javier. It's saying sometimes we have to let the process play out for the people that we care about. We can support them. We can keep an eye on them. Like if they get stuck or something, we can help wriggle them free, but we need to let that process play out. And sometimes what we do is just witness and be a witness for somebody. Let's talk about Taurus II. Taurus II, second decan Taurus. This one's interesting. This one's really interesting. Oh, I like that. Javier says her snake's name was Naga. That's good. Harry Potter reference, right? So Taurus II, Venus-ruled sign, Taurus, okay? The nocturnal domicile of Venus, but the face ruler is the moon. And this is some territory I've had some experience with. My moon is at 15 degrees Taurus. My midheaven is at 13 degrees Taurus. So it's probably some pretty important things and changes happening with this full moon on my natal midheaven for sure. I'll keep you up to date with what's going on. But this decan is associated with the Six of Pentacles. And the book T calls it the Lord of Material Success. The Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of Success. Austin Coppock's name for it in his first edition is Alinga Yoni. Now, I'm not sure if there's a second edition name difference. There might be when that comes out. But there is a spirit in this decan called the Horai. And the Horai are the personification of the seasons. So one of the things that we are working with spiritually in this decan is how do we come into alignment with the seasons of our life? How do we think like a gardener, think like a steward of the land, think like a tree? You know, I was having a conversation with my dad. Fortunate enough that my dad's still around and we have some nice conversations. And we were talking about just our values versus the society's values, or my own values versus society's values. And I was looking out the window and I saw that one of the beautiful maple trees in our backyard, and I saw that their leaves falling to the ground, and thinking about how those leaves were going to provide sustenance and resources for the next cycle of seeds that are going to be born in my yard. And I was like, Dad, I think my values are the values of the tree, the values of the cycle, the values of nature, not the values of late stage capitalism, not the values of greed. It's about a cycle of exchange. And this card teaches us that. It teaches us about giving and receiving. Some of what nature does is, like that tree, for example, that tree is sucking up nutrients from the soil throughout the year so that it can grow its leaves, and then its seeds and leaves will fall to the ground. Those leaves will compost and feed the next cycle of plants. They will maybe even provide food for those seeds so that the next generation can come through. So there is a receiving that happens in Taurus II, and there is some kind of philanthropic type of exchange, a giving. And you could see this in the Six of Pentacles, the giving and receiving. Sometimes we are on the receiving end, like these two figures, and sometimes we're the philanthropist that is giving to others. As someone who has spent some time with this decan, I've been on both ends of this relationship, just as many of us have been. We are all in reciprocal relationship with one another, and we try to find a way to have balanced and even exchanges. So that linga yoni that Austin Coppock talks about it's a fertility agent. He talks about the fertility, the fructification of the soil, the opportune moment to be able to plant your seed within the soil that has been plowed and prepared. And I'll tell you a little story. It's a little bit scorpionic and crass, but I think that you can handle it. So I actually have met Austin Coppock once in my life at a conference, at the United Astrology Conference, and I sat at the hotel lounge, the Marriott in Chicago in 2018 with Mr. Coppock, and I was asking him. I was asking him about the decans. I was very new to traditional astrology at that time, and I had just gotten his book, and I was like, hey, what do you make of having the moon in its own decan? You know, I have this moon, it's on the midheaven. What is, because he was like, there's secret superpowers associated with this. And in Austin Coppock way, he was like, it's the slow fuck, man. It's the slow fuck. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, but he was like, it's about taking your time, you know, it's about like doing things at your own pace, you know, stamina, all of these things, and being able to do just enough to like keep things moving forward in a rhythmic way. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes some sense. And that's sort of how I've been able to, I don't know, I've applied those lessons to my life, especially to my career as a second decan Taurus midheaven type of person. I try not to force the issue. I try to show up and do exactly what I need to do for that day. I water the plant just as much as it needs for that day without overwatering it, without overdoing it. And then I take time to rest and recharge. And through that steady routine of showing up, of not forcing things, of understanding that there is no overnight sensation with Taurus II, we may learn that consistency, healthy routines, slow and steady wins the race, that like the rabbit and the hare, right? These are the experiences that Taurus II is going to teach us. The song that I picked for this, I always pick a song for my advertising on Instagram. And the song that I picked was one by Billy Joel. It's called Vienna, right? And he starts out and he's like, slow down, you crazy child. You're so ambitious for a juvenile, you know, and it's talking about how you need to slow down, you know, that Vienna waits for you. You're going to burn yourself out if you continue to push the river and go so quickly. And I think it's interesting because I think that Billy Joel's a Taurus. He may even have the sun in Taurus too. And I'm sure that there have been times in his life where he probably, as a young, successful musician, was experiencing everyone telling him, hey, keep touring, keep doing this, keep writing. Everybody that wanted to exploit him and get on the Billy Joel gravy train. And at some point, you just start to burn out, right? And you have to find that balance. And that song may have been his message to himself in that time period, to take his time, that there's no hurry, you know, like this life requires patience. This life requires gentle unfoldings. And I think that when you have an experience with this decan, you can become very fertile through consistent effort. You can create all sorts of wonderful things over time. I was looking back on my channel here, where this channel is going on about 8 years of existence, and I've pretty much showed up weekly and done a 1.5 to 3 hour long live stream for almost 8 years. And that's just consistent effort over time. And if you add all those hours up, I think we've probably created over 1,000 hours worth of material. And it's not through just burning yourself out. It's through that consistent effort over time. Okay. Let's see. I'm just looking through the chat here, going back in time. Very interesting name from Austin. Linga Yoni is a great description for fertility and creation. I have my natal Jupiter in Taurus too. So cosmic passports, this could be something that, to create honor and merit in your life. This is an important theme for you, to be consistent over time, right? To take your time, to let the natural forces help out, right? Let's see. Oh, man. World of Warcraft, Javier says. Naga, right? The reference. Javier says, yes, the tree is the moon. The roots is Scorpio. Wow, I'm feeling this hard. Release that energy for new growth. Perfect. I love that. I love that. I love that realization that you're having there. Javier's loving the storytelling episode. We got a lot of stories coming up, right? Just enough, yes. Devin says, that's so Austin. It was, thinking back on it, it was the quintessential Austin moment. And I feel very blessed to have had the experience with him. Devin says, this is not the vibe with Venus here. Slow. Yeah, right. It's Venus is going to be moving into Scorpio and wanting to maybe pursue things, right? Moving into a Mars ruled sign potentially. Let's see. Javier says, crazy child. I love it. I love this because I think my brain only grasps the so-called crass. Yeah, we try to keep it mostly clean on this channel, but we'll have our moments. This is we're not 100% angel or devil here on the channel, so we're just human. Devin says, wow, a whole Venus cycle. That's a lot of effort. Yeah. Let's see. Dedication over time. Exactly. All right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Menkar. So 13 degrees of Taurus, Menkar. Before I talk about Menkar, let me give you some of my themes that I have in my Decans of Taurus webinar, and then some questions for you to reflect upon with this decan. Themes of generosity and altruism, establishing a consistent rhythm. Tiferet in Asya is the Kabbalistic Sephira associated with this. Tiferet associated with the sun and with centrality and balance. So balance of body and spirit. Procreative unions, appreciating the present moment, and then slow and steady manifestation. So questions you can ask yourself related to the decan specifically. What seeds are you sowing in your life? What seeds do you want to plant? What is ripe to be planted, even in a time where we see death on the face of the earth with the composting period? There may be something that you need to plant for the next cycle so that you can birth something into the next spring. What routines will support your growth? Can you work with the natural cycles to create fertility? What virtues practice over time will lead to success, right? How can you stay true to your ethics, stay true to your vision? This is something I constantly ask myself. I'm someone who's can be accused of being pretty stubborn when it comes to staying true to my values. And it's not always easy. My values are pretty idealistic, and sometimes there's sacrifice involved with that. But what things are, if you practice those virtues over time, how can you arrive with your integrity intact rather than arriving at the top of the mountain and then experiencing the downfall that can inevitably happen if you've stepped on people along the way? What tangible achievements have you manifested? Sometimes looking back and saying, you know what, we achieved this good thing, and appreciating that which you've manifested can be a theme. And then finally, how can you share your abundance? There is an inherent generosity to this decan. So I think that thinking about what you can give to the world is really important. And this in my business model, I've done a lot of things where I've had some things that I've had, exchanges for, and I've had some things that I've freely given to the world. I've worked with people with different types of sliding scales and things of that nature. It's important to give back in that way. I think that sometimes we are shown examples of leadership, especially recently, of people just grasping for every single little penny that they can acquire. And that really isn't healthy over time. That's something where it's ultimately going to come back and sow the seeds of resentment and the seeds of their own undoing. And by giving back, you're making a healthy system, right? You're making a healthy exchange with people. Now, when we talk about Menkar is a fixed star in Cetus the whale. And Menkar is a sea monster, basically, that devoured Andromeda. Remember that movie, what was it called? It had Harry Hamlin in it in the 80s, Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans. And it had Andromeda chained to a rock, right? The Kraken, basically. I think Menkar and the Kraken are similar types of archetypes, right? And it is this collective force of the unconscious, right? That where we're seeing some unseen forces emerging from the depths. And that may be a little bit scary at times. We may feel an extra sensitivity to the collective emotional state, to the public's emotions, the emotions of the masses. It can help us to tap into collective flow, though, as well. Oftentimes, as someone with an angle, the midheaven here, I feel myself often tapping into, with the moon here too, right? Tapping into the collective zeitgeist of emotions. I feel things before I become aware of them in the collective. And that to me is a little bit of a Menkar type of experience. It's not always fun. Sometimes I feel the collective fear. Sometimes I feel the collective anger. But sometimes I feel the collective joy. And I think that it's important to kind of like look at whether the feelings that you're feeling are coming to you from your own individual point of consciousness, or if you're absorbing some things from others. Those are important distinctions to make. But this can also help us to understand right timing. Sometimes when we tapped into the collective flow, we are in the right place at the right time. And I think this fixed star can also help us to understand what the needs of the moment can be, and to be able to make positive choices in that moment that can lead to success. All right, let's see. Checking in with our chat here. Javier is asking, because this is not the ending from seeds planting April 27th, the new moon in Taurus, so we can plant new ones now. Yeah, there might be a connection with that new moon in Taurus that came earlier in the season. And, if you think about different ways of thinking about beginnings and endings, or Ouroboros loops, if you will, that song Closing Time from the 90s, was it the 90s now? Closing time, right? Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. So even if we're experiencing consequences, endings, composting, that is the material that is going to be the energy that the new seeds are going to be planted into. And again, the timing is really important. If you think about the composting cycle, you can't plant a new seed necessarily in raw compost in the middle of winter. There has to be a cycle that goes through that process of decay to turn that matter, that decaying matter, into fertility moving forward, the conditions that will support that seed. So it's a lesson in not rushing the process. Yes, there will be certain seeds that are planted. Mostly, I think that this will be a peak period of letting go of something, but because it's a peak of letting go, the seed of renewal is birthed within that. I know it's paradoxical sometimes to think that way, but when we start thinking cyclically and less linearly, it starts to make, I think, a lot more sense. Javier says, we are now receiving that bounty, so we can now share. I mean, we're always in a process of giving and receiving, Javier, where it is a continual process. It's not one moment or the other. And you may be receiving something from somebody, and that may be their point to be giving. You may be giving, and that may be someone else's point to receiving. It is an endless cyclical process. Oh, nice. Some synchronicity, right? Javier was watching Clash of the Titans the other day. She says, I was so sad for Medusa. The oversized scorpions were lovely during this season. There you go. Perfect. Devin says, my favorite Menkar native is Angela Davis. Her ascendant is here. Perfect. Yeah, Angela Davis really tuned in to the zeitgeist, right? To the collective will of the people, and became sort of a figurehead for that, for revolutionary change and for those exchanges. That's a great example there, Devin, for sure. All right. I'm going to keep on rolling here, friends. I'll keep checking in periodically, but let's keep rolling. So let's talk about Venus. So Venus, in this case, is the host. And we look at our deck and flash card for Venus, and it's Libra 3. So Venus is going to be at 28 degrees of Libra in her own domicile. She's in aversion to the moon. Okay, she's on the other side of the moon. I'll just show you what that means. If you're unfamiliar with that concept, here's Venus. And Venus is on the opposite side of the moon, but in a blind spot. The two signs on either side of an opposition and either side of a conjunction are these blind spots called aversions in traditional astrology. So Venus doesn't have a direct line of communication to the moon because it's an aversion. But because it is in a sign that is ruled by Venus, because the moon is in a sign ruled by Venus, there is this kind of secret kind of connection between them called like ingirding. Like there is a way for Venus to provide resources because it is its home domicile. So there may be secret areas of support. Even if we're feeling destabilized by some changes that are coming, we have secret areas of rebalancing and repurposing. Now let's go to the deck and flash card to see what type of energy it's going to be drawing upon. Okay. So here's Libra 3. And Libra 3, rest from strife, Book T calls it, the Lord of rest from strife. The Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of truth. Truce. And then the aforementioned Austin Coppock calls it a gyroscope. So the spirit in this deck is Nemesis. And Nemesis is a deity that helps to restore right proportion. She increases that which is lacking and decreases that which is excessive. She is giving you your due from the actions that you've taken in the past. So we may be experiencing at this full moon a rebalancing in our life. We may be seeing some things that were lacking increased, might be seeing some things that are in excess decreased. We are also potentially receiving our due, right? Whether that due is positive, whether it's negative, it's just a result of the actions that we've taken in the past. Now with Venus here, it's smoothing that process out, right? Maybe it's a joyful rebalancing. Maybe it is something where we can create win-win situations, not only in our own lives, but in other people's lives as well. So just like we've been talking about with Jupiter in Cancer 3, creating situations where we can create abundance without diminishing others. This decan, maybe we can create a balanced situation. We can do the maintenance mode of bringing things back into equilibrium and into harmony. So part of that is going to be what we're experiencing at this full moon as well, with this Venus at 28 degrees of Libra. Okay. I like this decan. This is one of my favorite decans, to be honest with you. You see the Four of Swords here. You have the effigy of a knight. In the stained glass window that you see in the card, there is the word Pax, P-A-X, which is a translation of peace, I believe, in Latin. And this is a decan to take a time out, to rest, to meditate, to be able to think very clearly about what your next moves are going to be without rashness, to be the eye of the storm, to be the eye of the hurricane. Speaking of hurricanes, I mean, we talked about this last week where I talked about with Uranus moving back into Taurus 3, we might be dealing with some forces of nature that are outside of our control, that are greater than us. And we may be dealing with some situations in our life that are a little bit out of our control. And if we get to a place of clarity, if we get to a place of letting our thoughts, our our chattering mind settle a little bit, that can help us to make better decisions when we're dealing with maybe what feels like a crisis situation in that moment. I've often mentioned that this is where my part of spirit is at. Part of spirit sort of talks about how we might react to our fate. I've had many moments where I've been facing my fate, and the immediate reaction that I had was to get very quiet, to get very still, maybe even to lay down and meditate. I've also had situations where when I meet a challenging fate that someone else is experiencing, I have to be that calm presence in the storm, and restore balance and right proportion in that way, as in a supportive role. So like saying, okay, if someone's experiencing something like a shock that was unstabling and unsettling and unbalancing for them, how can I be that support system? How can I be the clear and steady presence, instead of adding to the anxiety that change might enact? So this is something that we all could be experiencing, is how do we become that balancing, stabilizing force even when the storm rages around us, right? Okay. So now let's talk about how this is going to unfold over time. Before we do so, let's take a little stretch break. Stretch your legs a little bit, okay? And do me a favor while you're stretching out. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell. Sometimes when we have a consistency like I try to provide with this live stream being at the same time every week generally, we can come to take for granted some of the changes that could happen when things outside of our control come up. Like it did last week when, through no fault of my own, a tree trimming company cut the line to our internet, and we were without internet about an hour before we were about to go live, and we had to reschedule for the next day. Now, if you have that notification bell on, you're not going to miss out, right? So turn the notification bell on, subscribe to the newsletter. You'll get updates on when we're going live there. If you want to support the channel, like the video. You can support with super chats. You can support over at Buy Me a Coffee if you want to do that. Visit the website, yada, 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 right? Okay. Let's talk about how this is going to unfold over the next few weeks leading up to the new moon in Scorpio 3. The new moon Mercury Cazimi in Scorpio 3. Oh my goodness, that sounds intense. Some of this is going to be a little bit of a review of some of the themes that we talked about in the astrology of November. I did a deep dive on some of these things in that last live stream. But I did want to just kind of remind you of these things so that you can be prepared. Okay, so let's bring the chart back up here. We've got Silent Murmur is joining us. Nice to see you, friend. Says, I'm late after napping too long. No, you're right on time. Thanks for being here, Spencer. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you, and thank you for letting me know that you're here. I love when I see people in the chat, and I know that they're here supporting the channel. Appreciate you, friend. Oh yeah, the stained glass window in the Four of Swords, Javier says, looks like the Six of Pentacles. Maybe there's a connection with that, with this full moon, right? Like a connection with that third decan of Libra and the second decan of Taurus, with the relationship between the Six of Pentacles and the Four of Swords. So the first aspect, so I'm going to keep the full moon in the inside wheel, and I'm going to show you how the aspects are going to move on the outer wheel, okay? So the first aspect that we're going to see coming to fruition is once the moon moves outside of a concept called being under the bond. So what we're looking for when we have a planet under the bond is it's within 15 degrees of conjunction or opposition to the sun. And usually the ancients would consider the moon sort of being in a suspended animation. Generally, the moon is associated with manifesting things and bringing celestial energies down to the earth through that lunar sphere. And when it's under the bond, it's held in check. Think about how the moon starts to emerge as a crescent moon at the new moon, how its light starts to fade at the full moon. So in this case, when the moon is moving outside that 15 degrees of opposition, the first aspect it's going to make is an opposition with Mars. So we have the moon in Gemini 1, okay, associated with the Eight of Swords. We have Mars in Sagittarius 1, associated with the Eight of Wands. One of those decans, Sagittarius 1, has to do with speed and movement. The other one has to do with feeling potentially stuck and paralyzed due to too many options. So I think one of the feelings we may have after the revelations of the full moon are we're going to want to move forward very quickly, but we may feel like we're a little bit stuck because we've got a lot of different directions that we could move in. And that could be a little bit overwhelming at the time. And in addition to that, Mars is separating from that opposition to Uranus. So I do think that it's important to take your time to review all of your options before taking action, especially because we have Mars moving into, Mercury moving retrograde. We'll talk about that in a second, okay? Let's see. Silent Murmur says, it seems like the plant behind you has grown 4 times larger in the past year. Maybe it has. It has gotten pretty big. I think it's pretty happy where it is, right? That's nice to see. I always like, it's kind of interesting to see how what a static background might change over time. And having something living in the space shows us the passage of time, right? It's pretty cool. That plant has been with me, Silent Murmur, for a number of years. I think probably since 2004. So it is a very old plant. It is over 20 years old. It was actually stolen from my house back in about 2005 in Kalamazoo. Someone broke into my house, stole a bunch of stuff, including my Stevie Wonder box set that I never recovered, unfortunately. And also this plant, which I saw them breaking into my house. I was actually at my neighbor's house right next door while it was happening. And I came back and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was sorry, but I was like, oh no, what's going on? And they ran out of the house and I actually caught their license plate number. So I wrote down their license plate number. They got caught and they found this plant in the trash can. And they're like, do you want your plant back? I'm like, hell yeah, I want that plant back. So it has followed me around through a number of different moves. And yeah, over 20 years old now. So it's like a family member at this point, right? Silent Murmur says, it may be imagery or may seem fuller to me, but it does look very happy. I think plants thrive more when they stay in one place. Absolutely. I agree with that. If the plant has what it needs, right? If it has the right light, if you take care of it. I try to take good care of my plants, water them just enough, not too much. Yeah, over 20 years. That's a long time. Absolutely. I have a jade plant that's almost that old too, and it's enormous, and it's gone through a lot of different manifestations. Javier says, trash plant phrases make me laugh. Yeah, that's a big adventure for a plant. Yes, Devin says, I agree. It is. You could make a Pixar film about it, probably. I don't remember what the name of these plants are, but yeah, it's been through a lot. And here we are, still going. Okay, so first aspect, moon opposite Mars. Maybe feeling like we have a lot of options and wanting to move on them. But a very important caveat is we need to take our time because Mercury is about to retrograde, okay? On the 6th, so that's the 6th that we see that aspect happening. On the 6th, we're also seeing Mars making a sextile to Pluto. So there may also be something where we're dealing with the collective that is outside of our control, where there's a revelation of some corruption within the system, which we basically are seeing every day now, revelation of corruption in the system. So it won't be anything new. It'll just be more of that same stuff that we're dealing with that's very difficult. As we move forward to the 7th, Uranus is going to retrograde back into Taurus. So here is, during that day, Uranus has moved back into Taurus. You can see it's the 8th on the screen here. But Venus will also be making the square with Pluto on the 7th. So be very careful about just, I guess, relationships and manipulation within relationships. Venus in Scorpio is not necessarily acting in the same way that it would in its own domiciles, where it is functioning as a receptive energy. Even though I will say this, Venus is in the morning star phase, so a little bit more, excuse me, of a warrior queen, Venus. But the other thing that I failed really to mention is that Venus is going to be going under the beams of the sun at this full moon. So you can see now, like right as it makes its square to Pluto, it has just gone under the beams of the sun. So let's make that a different color. Let's make that purple. So now Venus is becoming invisible, okay, at this full moon. It is going into the beams of the sun so that it can kind of get this renewal in the heart of the sun. Now, that renewal does not come for a few months. So one of the things that I would look for in your chart, if you were to come and sign up for a reading or whatnot, is what 2 signs or houses is Venus ruling in your chart? Where is Taurus? Where is Libra? And how may those 2 topics in your life be undergoing a metamorphosis? Maybe through necessity, maybe through that square with Pluto saying, you know what, there is a force that's outside of your control. You may have to make some changes in your life and in your business, whatever it is, to be able to adapt to the changes that are happening. Now, as I'm recording this, we're facing down an extended government shutdown in the United States. We have food benefits potentially not going out in the 1st of November. I hope, as I'm recording this, that will get resolved so that people can have food, so that we don't have to see this oligarch class basically like punishing the most vulnerable people so that they can get an extra tax break and utilizing that as political capital and ammunition. It's messed up. It's something that is really, really difficult to witness. And with Venus going under the beams of the sun and going into her exile in Scorpio, right? So the 6th to the 7th, Venus under the beams into Scorpio, we may be wanting to pursue when Venus functions a little bit better in being receptive. We may be pursuing desires that are maybe not the healthiest for us. We may be glamorizing our addictions. We may be glamorizing the old forms that we need to let go of. Venus is going to Cazimi in early January. So if you're having some changes that look scary on the surface, right, in your Taurus and your Libra area, start doing the research behind the scenes so that you can have a rebirth in those topics in January. That's really important. It's going to Cazimi in the 2nd 10-degree section of Capricorn. So that's going to be about building new structures. Before you build new structures in your life, sometimes you have to tear down the old ones. And tearing down the old ones takes faith, because we're tearing down what once provided us with security. And as we tear down those structures, we have to have faith in ourselves and in the universe to be able to provide, in our communities, in each other, to be able to support one another through those changes. So a really important moment, this full moon, representing the sort of Venus taking to her sickbed so that she can get ready for renewal in early January. So I guess this is a long-winded way of me saying, be patient with that process. Patience, patience, patience is the theme of the day, right? Like Billy Joel said in Vienna, you know, you better slow down before you burn it out. Okay. You got so much, to do, but only so many hours in a day. Right. And you can't force the decomposition process either. Just like you can't force the growth process. When you plant a seed, you have to wait for that seed to sprout. You have to wait for the leaves to unfurl. You have to wait for it to flower. You support it. You nurture it. But you can't force it. Same thing when we're letting go of things. If we force the letting go process, sometimes what we're doing is just creating trauma in our life that we're going to have to revisit later. You know, if you make it such a shocking letting go that you just are so destabilized, that can be really painful. But if you let go one day at a time, just like you're letting letting things grow a day at a time. Then you can heal. You can heal that wound. Think about trying to force the decomposition process like a wound that you have. They keep picking at. If you keep picking at a scab, it's going to continue to bleed. If you let it heal, if you take care of it, if you put some scar gel on it, you put some Neosporin on it, and then you leave it alone, it will heal. It'll take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. You may get a nasty scar out of it or something like that you'll never be able to heal. But eventually life will go on, that wound will close, and you get to move forward with your life. So I think a really important moment with Venus going into Scorpio under the beams of the sun, squaring Pluto, but also Uranus makes its retrograde back in Taurus. So we may be having to go back and repair something due to this experience. And Uranus is moving into a Venus sign. So think about all the synchronicity associated with that. Venus under the beams, moving into her exile, squaring Pluto, and then Uranus being hosted by that Venus. Okay, so going back and repairing some damage, having patience with the process, thinking outside the box on how to deal with maybe a blow of fate that was bigger than us. It's like the recovery after a storm. Like, for the people who, I don't know if we have any listeners in Jamaica, but people who are experiencing the hurricane damage there, they're going to have a long restoration process in front of them, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time to repair that damage, and they may have to have ideas about new ways of thinking about doing things that will help to move forward through something that's no fault of their own. All right, let's see. I'm checking in with our chat here. Kate's here. What's up, Kate? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way. Okay. Javier says I should hit the food bank. Oh my goodness. I hope you're experiencing food security, Javier. Yeah, and if you're not, I hope that you get all the support that you need, friend. Silent Murmur says withholding food stamps may be how they found that food stamps are being dispensed to about 1 million Barbary invaders. I don't know what that comment means. Maybe you can explain that better. But I don't think withholding food for anybody is a good thing. And I think that just because somebody is maybe not in a certain demographic that someone might agree with, that they don't deserve support. I think that borders are imaginary. I think those are imaginary constructs that people in power have constructed to continue to hoard wealth and resources. So if that's what you're insinuating, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to disagree. But if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, then I apologize, friend. Okay. Sing it, Spencer Javier says. Kate says, I'm trying to shed and let die an old version of myself currently. Yeah, I think we're all going through that, friend. Javier says, I legit hear more trauma you got to deal with later, and I need one of those dog cones. There you go. We need emotional and spiritual dog cones. I like that. The cone of shame, I guess you could say, the Elizabethan collars to protect us from ourselves. Exactly. Okay. Kate says, there's a liminal space between death and resurrection. Absolutely. And we have to allow that process to play out. Javier had their personal hurricane hit in May and March, and I'm still cleaning up. Yeah, so I'm going to skip over that. I think that you are confirming the thing that I disagree with, Silent Murmur, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. But this is a channel that appreciates the dignity of every human life, whether they are an immigrant, whether they are quote-unquote legal or illegal. It's not for me to decide who deserves to eat and who deserves not to. So we're going to have to agree to disagree on that, my friend. Javier says, it was a nice gift. A worker of mine left some yogurt and broccoli on my porch yesterday. Truly grateful for the trines also happening. Grateful that Canada doesn't deal with food stamps, Javier says. Yeah, I mean, oh man, I'm going to have to take a moment. This is an issue that really gets my blood boiling. I really believe in the sanctity of every human life and every non-human life, whether that's tree, animal, etc. And making judgments as far as and trying to demonize and other the most vulnerable of people makes me angry. It makes me really upset. And there's so much that goes into what we consider people on the fringes of society. There are reasons why people feel the need to emigrate to another country legally or illegally. And a lot of it is because of the consolidation of wealth of Northern Hemisphere countries that are putting pressure on Southern Hemisphere countries and exploiting their resources and putting them in the state where they feel that their only desperate move is to go into a different space. And I have a lot of compassion for that. And I think it's extraordinarily selfish and ridiculous to demonize those folks. So again, we're going to agree to disagree, friend, and move forward. Okay. Let's keep going. So, Mercury will station retrograde at 6 degrees of Sagittarius on the 9th of November. So let's keep moving forward with our thing here. We've got the Mercury retrograde period. Let's look at this. All right, so there's Mercury retrograde. We're having a spicy moment today with Mercury in Sagittarius, where oftentimes when Mercury is in Sagittarius, we're going to be expressing our beliefs, right? We're going to be expressing something that is important to us, that is deeply held belief system. Sometimes we may need to ask questions around that to get clarifications. And I'm glad that we asked some clarifying questions before we made assumptions in the situation. And sometimes the clarifying questions that you ask confirm a disagreement of point of views. And that's okay too. And that's when we say we agree to disagree and go on our different directions. So Mercury retrograde, stationing retrograde, 6 degrees of Sagittarius, the 9th of November. This is one where this could be sticky, especially because Mercury is moving into that malefic enclosure. And we may feel stuck. We want to move forward, but we have to really maybe ask some questions about our beliefs. We have to ask some questions about the direction that we're moving quickly towards. So this is one thing where this period of time, I'll give you some dates for the Mercury retrograde, okay? We have Mercury going under the beams on the 12th, all right? Stationing retrograde on the 9th of November, going under the beams of the sun at 5 degrees of Sagittarius on the 12th. Cazimi on the 20th at 28 degrees of Scorpio. It emerges as the morning star at 20 degrees of Scorpio, and then it stations direct at 20 degrees of Scorpio on the 29th. So this is sort of the process that's going to be playing out over time, right? So this is an important period of time, especially for your Gemini and your Virgo areas of your life as well. So this is a space where you may feel a little bit stuck. You may be feeling a little bit hemmed in your Virgo topic or house topic. In this random chart that I've had up here with Scorpio rising, Mercury is retrograding through the second house of resources, finances, etc. And it is going to be hosting the 8th and the 11th house, right? The 8th house of shared resources, the 11th house of shared belief systems, of groups, etc. So those topics for a Scorpio rising might feel a little bit under pressure, and it may be due to a financial issue or something about supporting yourself. So that's an exercise to do when you are trying to move forward with your an analysis of the Mercury retrograde. Which house is it retrograding in? And which two houses is Mercury trying to provide resources for? Okay, so that's an interesting way to look at it. Now, that's not the only planet that is shifting directions, okay? Let's see. Javier says, the crabs in us are fired up. I also am very protective. Yeah, I have a lot of strong emotions when it comes to protecting the vulnerable the weak, the exiled. I have a lot of strong emotions around food security. I think that every person deserves food and a shelter. And those are the types of things that are really like, it touches a nerve when people want to deny anybody that fundamental human right, no matter what their quote unquote status is, and their made up status based on some mythological boundary between land that we all share. So yeah, I get fired up on those with those issues in particular. So um, I'm trying to keep my composure today because I want to keep this a space where we can have disagreements, where we can model disagreeing about something without degenerating into either name calling or aggressiveness or violence. We have to be able to disagree about things, even if it's passionately, with still respecting each other's humanity, right? And I hope that we've modeled that on the channel today. But yeah, and just silent murmur, just to move forward with this. We're I don't think we need to continue to debate this online. We definitely completely disagree. We do not see eye to eye on that issue. So there is not going to be any productive discussion about it moving forward while I'm live on the channel trying to talk about the full moon. So if you want to talk about the full moon, that's fine, but we're going to move forward off of that topic. Okay. Jupiter is going to station retrograde on 11/11. Okay, 11/11. Make a wish, right? We are going to move forward and see that a lot of the challenges that we were experiencing, a lot of the issues that were coming up about, I think this is an interesting segue, right? Jupiter in Cancer 3. Cancer 3 is an awareness. It speaks towards an awareness of how through creating abundance, we may take away from someone else, or the fear that we may have through someone else benefiting, that we may be diminished. And this is part of the challenge that we're discussing today or debating or whatnot. Now, Jupiter in the third decan helps to create those win-win situations where we can share our abundance with other people without feeling diminished, where we can share our rights, share our power, share our resources, share our food without necessarily feeling like we are diminished. Now, when Jupiter stations retrograde in that decan, there may be some questions that come up. We may be reviewing how we create abundance in our life. We may be reviewing issues of scarcity versus surplus. How do we support those that are in need? How do we feel supported when we are in need? How do we create these cycles of reciprocity? Okay, and this is one of I think the challenges of Jupiter stationing retrograde is those questions are going to be coming up. Now, Jupiter is in its exaltation, and Jupiter functions very well in this sign and in this decan. It is something that is able to beget life in a very fertile way. Okay, it is helping us understand that there is abundance. There's enough for everyone. There's enough for us to share. We don't need to demonize other people. There's enough to go around. Now, when Jupiter is retrograding, it is not only going to affect that Cancerian house, it's going to affect the Sagittarius house and the Pisces house, because Jupiter is providing resources for those two houses. So there may be a review process that comes up, especially related to Sagittarius and Piscean topics in your life, or the houses related to that. Like in this arbitrary Scorpio rising chart, our belief systems, 9th house Jupiter, are going to be having an effect on our how we support ourselves, 2nd house Sagittarius, and maybe how we express ourselves creatively, or through issues like our children with the 5th house Pisces. So you can see how those things are connected, how the webs of our lives are woven within different topics. And this is true for life. One action in one area of our life can have a strong effect on another area. So that's going to happen, I believe. When does it station direct? I know it stations direct at 15 degrees of Cancer, because this is, I know it's right on top of my natal sun. That's why I know this. But March 10th, March 10th is when it's going to be stationing direct. So this is another couple months of trying to figure out some of those issues until March, until we get to really the cusp of the spring equinox. This is a good time to review Jupiter issues, to review those topics. Okay, so that brings us to our last quarter moon on the 12th, and last quarter moons help us to let go. They give us maybe sometimes potentially an existential crisis to deal with, where we're saying, how do we go through this in a way that we believe in what is right for us, right? So here is the last quarter moon. Sun's moving into Scorpio 3, shining a spotlight on the things we may glamorize or try to hang on to. We may have to let go of a position of power that we're hanging on to tightly with Leo 3, with the moon in Leo 3. We have to step down off of our throne and say, you know what, this isn't a battle worth fighting. We need to let go, and we need to recognize that we don't always have to fight the battles here. All right. So, last quarter moon. Mars is going to be conjunct Mercury retrograde at the end of this malefic enclosure. So not only do we have this last quarter moon, we have the end of the malefic enclosure of Mercury right as Mars conjoins and then goes on the other side of Mercury. So you could see as I'm moving forward, now we have, there it is. So see how Mars is on the other side of Mercury now? So it is released, so Saturn's ray is cast on this side of Mercury, and Mars is moving past that sign, so it's not enclosing it anymore. So that Mercury-Mars conjunction on the 12th could feel liberating. We could have a liberating conversation. We could have a liberating idea that will help us to move forward, where we're starting to maybe see what types of actions we need to take to move forward. Now, it's fascinating because Mars will move under the beams of the sun right as it is releasing Mercury from the malefic enclosure. So at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, it's moving under the beams of the sun, getting ready for its renewal in the heart of the sun in January at about, I believe it's anywhere from 16 and 19 degrees of Capricorn. I believe one was 16. I think it was Venus first and then Mars, but second deck in Capricorn. Really powerful place, the exaltation of Mars. So this is another instance of the Scorpio area of our chart and the Aries area of our chart being provided for from the Sagittarian topic. And we may have to do some things behind the scenes with that as well. I just think there's big changes coming in November. There's going to be events that affect multiple areas of our life, and we're going to have to be patient through the process because it's not going to unfold overnight. Now, that is setting up on the 17th, the Grand Water Trine in Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces from the 17th to the 21st. Okay, you can see here the sun is going to go into that relationship with these numbers of planets, right? We talked about that at great length, not only in the astrology of November, but in the Grand Water Trine specific live stream that I did a few weeks ago. So check that out. The gist of it, though, letting go of old forms, trying to do so in a way that doesn't diminish others, and then recognizing what sacrifices you want to need to make, or being bound to make, to be able to transform your life. Mercury will move retrograde into Scorpio 3 the next day, right? So it's going to move out of its exile and start getting very close to that Cazimi moment. Mercury is going to come into a Grand Water Trine, okay, just like the sun did. So it's reactivating the Grand Water Trine from October. So you may have gotten close to something, like asked some questions about what you need to let go of, but now there's a revisiting of that between the 19th and the 22nd. Mercury during that period will oppose Uranus on the 19th. So now Uranus being in Taurus, there is a Mercury-Uranus opposition from Scorpio to Taurus. And that can be a little bit challenging, right? We're trying to identify what forms we need to let go of without glamorizing that past, without trying to keep something dead alive. And then we might be getting some shocks around how we need to repair something. That to me, that Mercury-Uranus opposition is the recognition of what needs to be let go of and return to the earth, and what we need to repair, what we need to work through and be patient in that process. And that brings us to the Mercury Cazimi. Okay, really powerful moment at the new moon. So this is the last series of aspects we'll talk about here today. You can see on the outside, you've got the new moon in Scorpio 3, simultaneously while Mercury is Cazimi at 28 degrees of Scorpio on the 20th. So this is going to be the end of this part of the phase where maybe we are understanding, giving, and receiving, but now we are starting the process of really letting go at the 20th of November. Okay, of like saying, hey, okay, we've got Mercury Cazimi, we've got a renewal, we've got ideas about how to go through this gracefully, how to do it in a way that appreciates the beauty involved with it, and we're just going to be setting ourselves up for a new start, for liberating that energy to find a new form, to find a new host. The Decan leader or Decan spirit of Sagittarius 1 is Loimos, the god of plagues, the host of like something. So we might be trying to find a new vehicle for something that we have let go of. So that's what we've got for this lunar cycle. I'm just checking in with the chat here. Let's see. Just checking in here, just digesting what is said so that I don't make any assumptions. Okay. All right. MCB says, do you think it will be a good month for moon manifesting? I mean, in comparison to what? Like, like, I think that there's always something we can manifest within a moon cycle. I think that the full moon is generally showing us the manifestation of the seeds that we've planted before. So in this case, it could be the seeds that we planted in the spring at the new moon in Taurus, or the manifestation of the seeds that we planted at the new moon in Libra. And I think that it's a peak of that experience. When we get to the new moon in Scorpio, manifestation is an interesting question there, because it is the beginning of a composting process. So will you be able to start the letting go process? Yeah, absolutely. Is it something that is beneficial for wanting to grow something new? Probably not the right time for that. So that's something to consider. But sometimes we have to do what we have to do. Sometimes you have to figure out how to do it, how to figure out how you can support yourself, even if you have to let go of something, and you might have to start something new in that regard. MCB says, I'm feeling you, Spencer. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for your compassion. Jody's here. What's up, Jody? Sorry you're late. Oh, no worries, friend. We're just hanging out. Silent Murmur says, may we find ways to share resources without the diminution of substance or effulgence of sustenance for the benefit of all beings. I think that's well said. And you know what? You haven't been demoted, friend. We just disagree about a political viewpoint. And it's something that I feel really emotional about and passionate about. And I think we expressed our viewpoints, and we'll leave it at that. We disagree on that, but I respect your humanity, and I appreciate you being a part of our discussion here. And I think that I wish we could have more discourse about things that people disagree with in society that's civil. And as much as it makes me angry, it does make me angry. I'm going to be honest with you, friend. Like seeing people wanting to other people and take resources away, or to buy into the illusion that there's not enough to go around. but that is a viewpoint that I have, a worldview that I have. And it doesn't mean that you are a person that is not worth hearing. It just means that we disagree. So I guess that's where I'll leave it. While I still have some patience for myself, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, though, oftentimes we have certain things that touch a nerve with us. You know, we have different um, issues in our life that we get really passionate about. What might touch a nerve for someone else and get them really fired up might not affect someone else the same way. And that topic just happens to touch a nerve with me. And it's the timing of that isn't great either with like Mercury. And this is what I find fascinating about astrology is Mercury right now is in a fire sign. And the influence of those planets is really strong right now. It could be really easy, instead of asking questions with Mercury and a fire sign associated with Jupiter, it could be really easy to fire off an opinion and fire off a statement of what we see as our capital T truths. And understanding that that energy is coursing through our bodies, it can lead us to take time out in moments and say, maybe I don't have all the information on that. Maybe we need to ask more questions about that. Or instead of like, you know, firing off an arrow that could wound someone. So instead of me saying on this with someone I disagree with, being like, you know, fuck you, you're an asshole. Like that's not productive. Like saying we agree to disagree. Let's go our different directions, and maybe we can learn more about each other's viewpoint. That to me is where we get to the place of productivity. And I wish that we could model that more in discourses. So if that's what we've done today, Silent Murmur, you and I, having a conversation and modeling a way to do it in a way that honors each other's humanity, even if we vehemently disagree about the political ideology around it, then I think that will have been of benefit for the channel. So that's where we'll leave it today, friend. Jody says, just got home from work. I'll watch the replay later. Appreciate you, friend. Okay. Thank you so much for these comments here and the engagement. Jody says, that's why I love you, Spencer. I love you too, Jody. I hope you're doing well, friend. Like, I'm not a perfect being. I'm not immune to anger, discontent. But we have to try to be our best selves in the moment. You know, there's too much hatred going around for each other. There's too much conflict. There's too much demonizing of this group and that group. I'm just over that. The only real capital T truth is love. And the other capital T truth is that we are one. Now, what that one is, I don't necessarily know. I mean, I have my theories, I have my questions, but we share this beautiful planet together. And I hope for all of our sakes that we can learn how to share, how to distribute resources fairly, how to share land, how to share resources, how to share whatever everybody needs to live a happy life. And sometimes we're going to be on the top of the wheel of fortune. Sometimes we're going to be on the bottom. And, you know, I think that it is super, super important to just try to have grace for one another in these times, even if we're feeling scared, even if we're feeling a sense of lack and scarcity, even if we feel like a certain person or group is creating that fear or scarcity. Just having compassion, I think, is a good baseline for all of it. So, yeah. Javier says, group hugs, we all fight for love, and I think that's what matters. There you go. Plus loving knowledge. I agree. MCB says, this all conversation looks like Mercury retrograde is already here. It's, well, definitely feeling, we'll probably have to feel that a little bit moving forward. There will be some uncomfortable conversations and debates with Mercury retrograde. I think the key is to feel the feelings, slow down, and then feel how we're going to move forward with it. Ask a lot of questions rather than making declarative statements. We tried to do that today. We tried to clarify each other's position before we you know, cast aspersions or anything like that. You know, appreciate you, Javier. Okay. Javier says, Spencer, you're going to help me, both of you, not to not fire off. There you go. Silent Murmur says, I'll continually work on myself and leave it at that. Appreciate that. And so will I, you know? And that's all we can do in that moment, right? It's all we can do in the moment is continue to work on ourselves, to continue. Maybe sometimes what we have to do is compost old belief systems too, friend. I mean, this is something I'm going through this myself too. Is there are certain things that I believed about the world that our experience has shown me are not true, and that I have to change the way that I move through the world through my belief, right? So not only is it old forms with old things, old relationships, we can compost old beliefs too. And the way that you do that gracefully is through curiosity, through asking questions, through compassion, through being able to see things through multiple lenses and viewpoints. And that's something I try to do here too. And I think that, yeah, being able to, yeah, and I really appreciate the way that you're moving through this conversation today, friend. Says we can always find ways to resolve any issue. I agree. And Silent Murmur says maybe I need to compost some ways I characterize things. Absolutely, and maybe myself included too. So I'm not claiming the right to the capital T truth. I have a certain set of things that I believe in, and I always am trying to constantly re-examine those things. And if I can inspire others to do that too, then we're both going to be better people because of it, friend. Okay. Marsha Lindsay is here. Just got home, Spencer. I love your love. Love your love too. Love to love you, babe. What song is that? Feels like a 70s disco song. Appreciate you being here, friend. Thank you for the kind words. Javier says, don't be hard on yourself. We're all here to learn. I agree with that. MCB says, great courage to you all for having a calm debate. I agree. It does. It takes a lot of patience and guidance and grace for one another to be able to navigate difficult topics. Okay. MCB says, I was wondering, in your opinion, is it possible to sense astrological changes before the community does, thanks to a certain intuition or not? Yeah. I would say that as someone who has a Menkar midheaven, sometimes I see trends before they happen, or before they become conscious to the public. Sometimes I share them. Sometimes I just like, oh, that's weird. I wonder if that's going to happen. And then sometimes it does. So I think Menkar might be one of those placements at 13 degrees, 13, 14 Taurus that, you may have some of that insight, that foresight on some level for sure. Devin says, reminds me of The Right Story, Wrong Story by Tyson Yunkaporta. Yeah, Tyson Yunkaporta is a great author of the book Sand Talk, which I believe, Devin, you turned me on to. Well, he's an indigenous author from Australia, and talks about being able to see things from multiple viewpoints, and seeing things from an indigenous worldview. And I like the way that they resolve conflicts in his indigenous culture. It's sort of like the Michael Jackson "Beat It" video, where you tie a brace to the other person's wrist, and you both got knives. And in that culture, every slash that you make to somebody has to be returned equally. So when you know that when you're hurting someone, when you're slashing someone, that you have to receive an equal slash, it makes you think really hard about how you treat other people and how you might lash out with somebody. And that's really cool. And maybe there's something else that you're referencing too within that story. And if you want to turn us on to that, Devin, too, I'd be happy to hear. Jody says, the world is undergoing a rapid transformation. It's difficult to predict exactly what the future holds, and I think that's what makes many very nervous. Definitely, Jody. Jody and I have been kind of discussing the ramifications of artificial intelligence over the last week or so, and the challenges with that. I just saw news where yet another giant data center for OpenAI is planned to be opening in another city very close to where I live. And a lot of challenges around that. A lot of challenges with the environmental impact, with the cultural impact. That's a longer debate that I don't know if we have time to have today, but there's definitely some unnervingness, unnervedness, some unsettledness when we're facing big changes, and when the way that we've supported ourselves over many decades, etc., is changing right underneath us, where different jobs are being scooped up by machines and AI, etc. I mean, the AI revolution is similar to the Industrial Revolution, where people probably had similar fears about industrialization. And those fears were warranted. And those fears had consequences. People did lose work, but also industrialization has had environmental consequences. This is true for any new technology. And what we have to do, the way that we change this, Jody, I think that we need to get in the habit of discussing the ramifications of something before we make it essential to our culture, before we implement it and integrate it into every single thing. Now, I know that there are a few handful of people that are very greedy that don't like to think in that way. They think only in profit margin and the bottom line. But I think that this is the way that we make changes starts philosophically. So as we go through this Mercury retrograde period, starting with your beliefs and questioning those beliefs that you've held that were very dear to you, that may have served you at one point in your life. Not just you, Jody, but all of us, right? How do we start questioning our beliefs to the point where we start to see things from a different perspective, so that the actions that we take are informed by information about what is happening now versus what was happening maybe in the past? And it doesn't mean that we were wrong in the past. It means that we were utilizing the information we had in that moment. And now we need new information. So yeah, interesting times. Javier says, I'm kind of getting exciting for mini candy bags, but it's legit storming outside. Oh, man. Hopefully you catch a break, Javier. Devin says, we need to observe the stories we buy into and tell ourselves. Exactly. There's a lot of creation, a lot of the choices that we make start with belief. And when we see society changing, we have to adapt. There's an adaptability. Yeah, trees bending. Well, that's good advice, Javier, with the storm, with the trees bending. Maybe we need to be like those trees in the storm. Maybe you're getting a message right now of how do we become flexible, where we bend but don't break, right? Javier says, I always feel things before, or as Spencer said, I see it before. Yeah. Not uncommon for those of us who are sensitive to the way things are going. Jody says, as astrologers, we are not fortune tellers. We can only see what parts of life are being activated. Yes, I think that we can see trends, and we can see which phase of the cycle that we're in, right? And the AI story it's not the end of the story. We're in the beginning of it, with Pluto moving into Aquarius, with some of the changes that are coming up with Neptune and Saturn and all of that. So we'll have to live into the answers and gather more information, and then make wise decisions based on mutual care and love, not only for each other as human beings, but for the other creatures that inhabit this planet, and for the other forms of life, and for the planet itself. Okay. Kate says, my Mercury is in Capricorn. That is all for now. Oh, man. Well, so much great comments here, friends. Appreciate all of you. Let's see. Oh, okay. Devin says, right story, wrong story is another title of a book by Tyson Yunkaporta. I'll have to check that out. I don't know if I've read that one yet, so thanks for turning me on to that. And everyone, Devin, for that. Great author, right? It's this version of Dante's Inferno. I love it. I'll have to check that out. I really enjoyed Sand Talk. And then also Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass that came after, that I think has in a similar vein, but from a North American point of view. Okay. Jody says, Mercury in Sag doesn't do well. Sag moves too fast for Mercury, so Mercury doesn't operate at his usual mindful self. Sometimes, yeah, that can be part of it. Silent Murmur says, for clarification, AI data centers also use hundreds of times more energy and water than entire cities do. Yeah, that's a very valid concern. I've tried to, I would say that I tested out, I was curious about things like ChatGPT, and I asked it a few questions here and there, but I've stopped using it. After I learned about the environmental impact, after I learned about how it's trained, how the models are trained on other people's work, and I can't justify using it at this point. It's not worth it to me. And that maybe puts me at a pace disadvantage. Maybe someone else could do something faster than I might be able to do it. But I want to align myself with the pace of nature, not with the pace of hubris. So I like that clarification there, Silent Murmur. Yeah. We have Mercury in Sagittarius. Say it loud and say it proud. There you go. Silent Murmur says we have resilience. I hope we do. I hope we do, friend. I think we will be able to figure that out. It might be some painful journeys along the way, but I do believe in the resilience of the human spirit. Cosmic Girl is here. Says, good morning from Australia. All just tuned in. What decan is the full moon, please, Mr. Spencer? Well, we're wrapping up here, friend. But the full moon is in the second decan of Taurus, and so go back to the beginning of the broadcast, and we dived into all the decans associated with the full moon. But to make a long story short, pace yourself, right? It's all about giving and receiving, pacing yourself, and being patient with yourself and with others, and with asking good questions, and maybe re-examining our belief systems. All right, let's see. Jody says, after much contemplation, I came to the conclusion that humans and technology will have to coexist and find new ways to complement each other. I think that technology is a tool. I think artificial intelligence, unfortunately, is inevitable. I hope that there will be some benefits that come from it. I think that technology is like a knife, right? It's a tool, and it can be used to hunt. It can be used to make things. It can also be used to kill people. So the ethics involved in it are very much tied to the individuals and communities that are using those tools. I guess my question would be, the compromise, without belaboring the point too much, is if this technology is inevitable, how do we utilize it in a way that is lessening the environmental impact? How do we utilize it in a way that is not taking the creative process out of humanity's hands, and that isn't dulling our sense of process? The thing that I disagree about the most with AI is that it skips over the sometimes difficult processes that create the resiliency of humanity. Sometimes running into a boundary and into a wall, into a dead end, is the best thing that can ever happen to you when you go through a project, because it teaches you to learn, it teaches you flexibility, it teaches you patience. And when we get reliant on technology that does all those things for us, we lose that. We lose that resiliency, and we become completely dependent on it. And what happens when that technology isn't available, like maybe due to something outside of our control, or, and this is important, what happens when that technology, which is controlled by large corporate interests, becomes integrated in our life, that we become so dependent on it that the people that control that technology can set whatever price they want for it? Because that's what happens over time and time again in history. When we have a new breakthrough, television, internet, radio, etc., at first it's this big breakthrough. We're like, oh, this is going to change the way we do things. It's going to make life easier for everyone, and everyone's using it. And then eventually people figure out, oh, well, I'm going to try to consolidate power, resources, get a monopoly on this, and then charge people an arm and a leg and an ass to use it. And don't be naive to think that that's not going to happen. It's already happening. Okay. So try not to offload your creative spirit to those tools if you are using them. And then ask a lot of questions about, is it really necessary for you to make a picture of yourself as a superhero and have that dry up a lake in Georgia? Is that worth it? Is that worth it to you? Can you live with that on your conscience? Or not just a lake in Georgia, but your own lake near you that you need for fresh water. Are you going to be able to live with that? Is it more important for you to have to ask ChatGPT a banal question about your relationship? Or do you want fresh drinking water? Or do you want your electricity to not be $1 million? Like, these are real issues that we're facing with this. So it's all a balance. It's all trying to figure out how to do things in ways that are doing less harm. Jody, thank you so much for your super chat. You are always such a generous soul. Jody says, much gratitude for all of your soulful insights always. Appreciate you, and I love working with you, Jody, and right back at you. You are also an insightful soul who has a lot to offer, and a very generous spirit. So thank you for that. Appreciate you. We have a lot of people wanting to talk today. Maybe this is the Mercury in Sagittarius. We'll try to wrap it up in a second here, friends. I do have an I-Ching and an animal for you. But I thought these are good discussions. Let's see. I'm just reading here and getting. Kate says, yes, the balance of light and dark seeps through everything for sure. Javier says, let's leave technology as a tool, like Spencer said, pen and sword concept, right? Yeah, I mean, these are we're constantly evolving and changing. But I do think asking questions whether a technology, how do we mitigate the harm that a technology can do before we do the harm is really important and something I wish we could learn as a species. Devin says, how can it liberate us from the shackles of oligarchical capitalism? That's a great question. Maybe it can. I don't know yet. Maybe it creates super oligarchs, right? That's also a possibility. Maybe it creates a surveillance state that could be really uncomfortable and dangerous. There are all sorts of different possibilities. This is why we have to think in a web-like consciousnness rather than just either or linear fashions. This is what Taoism teaches us, is that sometimes we have to balance that light and dark, like Kate was saying, and we have, things aren't necessarily inherently good or bad. They are, and we have to decide how to engage with them and what we're going to utilize them for, how it's going to change us, right, as well. Yeah, technology is not going to stop, Jody says, absolutely. Silent Murmur says, AI lies 96% of the time and misidentifies people 50% of the time. It's not a perfect technology. And it is, this is another thing we're going to have to grapple with, Silent Murmur, is the post-truth era, where it's getting so good at recreating imagery that sometimes it's hard for us to tell fact from fiction. And that can be very dangerous moving forward. So yes, it doesn't always answer questions correctly. So all things to consider. Yeah. Cosmic Girl says, thank you, that will do. Happy to share on this full moon. We'll be celebrating my own second year of being a YouTube content creator. So it's in my second house. Congratulations, you, Cosmic Girl. Hope you're doing well and having success on your YouTube channel, my friend. Javier says, sorry, my language may be wrong. Hosted by Venus, sub-ruled by Mercury. Right. Okay. Silent Member says, as a side note, it hogs energy and water and makes its cost more than its value. That we agree on. See, I mean, here's another example, friends. Silent Murmur and I disagree pretty vehemently on one political issue, but we agree 100% on another one. So there's always common ground that you can have with people, and we wouldn't have discovered that we agree pretty much 100% on this if we had had a contentious argument about the previous issue. So by maintaining our humanity with one another, we found our common ground. So hopefully that's a way that we can work through the stickier parts of things that we disagree with others out in the world, so that we can find the things that we do agree on and team up on those things. So thank you for sharing that, friend. Sometimes it feels like you're calling me out with all my unfinished projects. I just call it how I see it in the stars. The stars are, you know, those connections that you make. We all feel it, right? We're all under the influence of these celestial auspices. So I think that's why we do this work, so that we can start to understand ourselves a little bit better and answer the call of the planets. Jody says, powerful, beautiful discussions. I agree, friend. Yep. I agree. Okay. Wow, you guys are really active today. Thank you so much for all your participations in here. Appreciate all of you. Says it's already created a surveillance state, but it's train wreck due to how nobody is allowed to discuss how investing in it only undermines human existence. Again, I agree. I agree. No argument for me on that one, friend. The dad jokes. What dad jokes? Oh, I missed a dad joke. Kate says, knock, knock. Who's there? Alex? Alex who? Alex playing later. Just let me in. All right. Oh, man. Okay. MCB says, I think technology like this so fast highlights all the problems already existing in society. Yeah, could be. These are good discussions, friends. Let's keep having these discussions. Let's keep talking about the ethical ramifications of the things that either we are incorporating into our lives by choice, or the ones that are being foisted upon us through no choice of our own. That's true for AI. A lot of the search engines that we use today, the technology has already been integrating, whether we have chosen to integrate it or not. This StreamYard that I use, they integrate AI technology options into it, and you almost have to swim upstream at this point not to use it. And that becomes true in a lot of ways. So the more conscious and the more aware we become of the impacts of our choices, the more we can make well-informed choices. So that these conversations are really important. Okay. Right. Yeah, I'll say all the dad jokes. All right, friends. Excellent conversations. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for, if you haven't liked the video already, please do that. Subscribe to the channel. We try to have space for discussions. We try to inform you, but also give you a platform for your voice if you are respectful, which I think we were today. Even if the viewpoint that is expressed within our chat isn't one that I personally agree with, we can still have ways to have discussions that are peaceful and that are hopefully productive. Yeah, so let's talk today about our I-Ching. So what is the essence of the full moon in Taurus II? I asked the I-Ching a few days ago. And what I got was developing gradually, hexagram number 53. So this really works through the patience element. Gradual advancement, slow and steady development, progress step by step, faithfulness, persistence. There is a promise of future success, but you must allow the situation to develop gradually in order to realize it. The Book of Changes compares the situation to a long period of courtship, betrothal, and engagement. The parties must get to know each other and develop bonds of shared commitment and trust to accompany bonds of initial attraction. The couple's families must be brought together. Plans must be established. Ritual formalities must be observed. All of these things take time. What is true of marriage and is true of all other forms of courtship and persuasion? If you're trying to get other people to make a major commitment or to do something important, don't expect them to be convinced overnight. You must be considerate and allow them to move towards a decision gradually after they have obtained the requisite level of trust and confidence. Similar to what we've been talking about today, like when we are in the process of shifting our belief systems, or when we're sharing some insight that we have with someone else that has a different belief system. I think the worst thing that we can do is to instantly demonize that person and their perspective. We don't have to agree with the ideal, but to lash out at the individual is where we go wrong in a lot of these discussions. And I think that's really important because what we do is we rob each other of the ability to change our mind through experiencing a new viewpoint, through experiencing a new point of view, okay? And when we have patience for each other, when we're going through learning processes, we allow others the dignity of making changes. If we instantly try to, become aggressive or violent with our viewpoints, if we lash out, we don't allow that person to make a change. Okay, so this is this gentle, gradual advancement at this full moon. We have to allow ourselves to come to those changes gradually too. Okay, there's some changing lines here. Okay, one changing line in particular. It says the wild goose gradually approaches the top of the hill. For 3 years, the woman cannot conceive a child, but in the end, nothing can hinder her good fortune. So Jack Balkin, he talks about this line, about this a lot of stories of geese in this hexagram. The top of the hill is a comparatively high position where one is isolated from others and may thus become an object of envy and attack. Failure to conceive a child means that one's plans do not come to fruition. The more you progress, the more people may envy you. Your elevated status may make others feel insecure. Some may disparage you and gossip behind your back. Misunderstandings between yourself and people that you care about or that you depend on may make you feel alone and particularly vulnerable. As a result of this isolation, you may make little progress for a time. Exercise patience. Temporary estrangements will eventually end, and you can begin to move forward again. Once you reestablish lines of communication, good fortune will follow. Okay, so this is really what we've been preaching today. The patience associated with the second decan of Taurus, not forcing the issue, gathering information, maybe a temporary estrangement of points of view eventually can be merged into agreement, like we saw today, like having a disagreement about one thing, but then coming into agreement about another topic. Like when we when we cast people into dualities, black and white dualities, and we write them off, we don't allow for the complexities of human beings, of issues, of nuance. And this is what we see with leadership in governments. They want to polarize us, the communities that they are ostensibly supposed to serve, into black and white, into red and blue, into whatever polarizations that we have. That's just not necessarily how human beings um, are set up. We are all complex individuals that have a matrix of belief systems. So this is, I think, really good advice as we move into like Thanksgiving season, where these conversations could be had around the dinner table on Thanksgiving, and they could maybe inevitably devolve into personal attacks. But I think it's important to resist that urge, and to let a temporary estrangement just be an opportunity to learn more about each other. So this is changing to the hexagram 52, which says keeping still. It's also translates to the mountain, restraint, being quiet, attaining inner peace, enduring, taking one day at a time. Great advice. How do we maintain that stillness, even in the face of opposition, even in the face of fear, even in the face of facing challenges in our life? How do we maintain that centeredness? This is really I think the message from Venus in Libra 3 for this full moon. How do we maintain that center, that eye of the hurricane type of energy, even when things are raging around us, whether it's our own emotions or the emotions of others? Okay, let me check in again with our chat here. Oh, let's see. Javier says, hey, Spencer, what's your next video going to be on? Well, next week I don't have a topic yet, but I am going to be, I think I'm going to be a guest on another astrologer's podcast. I'm going to be recording that next week, talking about Saturn and Neptune. So I will announce that when it's recorded. The next one I have scheduled is the new moon in Scorpio 3 on the 14th. But if there's some topics that you'd like me to explore next week, I have a kind of an open slot right now. I might meditate on that. I may take the week off since I have another engagement that week. But if there's something that's really like, you feeling that like I need to address, let me know, and I'd be happy to consider it. Let's see. Hold on, I'm just looking through the chat here. All right. I love these debates that are going on, and the AI debate is one that it's a big topic, and it's one that we're going to continue to need to have over many years. Think about Pluto's movement through Aquarius. If we want to associate that with AI, that's one way to think about it. There are other ways to think about it just from the lens of traditional astrology, but it's going to be a long process, and I don't think this is going away, but we have to continue to have these conversations. Let's see. I-Ching 53, steady progress. There you go. Lizzie Pooh says, right? Kate says, crazy thinking of all the Uranus in Taurus major aspects since 2020 and challenges to the structures that sustain us. And this full moon with the U.S. government workers and food security issues being issues. Yeah, that would be the other kind of traditional astrology way of looking at these things if we didn't want to include Pluto in that. But the Saturn-Pluto conjunction around 2020, which I think was in 0 degrees Aquarius, or maybe might have been the final degrees of Capricorn. I can't remember. Let me look at that again. I think it was, let's see, that was January 12th, 2020 at 22 degrees Capricorn. And the next one is going to be at 14 degrees of Pisces in 2053. so yeah, some of this might be, seen through those lenses and the changes that we've been unfolding since then. So that's a good realization too. Okay. MCB says, I have a question. Last week you talked about hours and days according to houses and signs. Can you quickly tell us which ones correspond to what, please? Sorry to come back to an old topic. MCB, what I was talking about with that was I've started to kind of work with the planet that is associated with the day of the week and try to understand that based on the planetary position in my own natal chart. So for example, the moon is Monday's planet. And in my natal chart, the moon is in my 10th house. So I tend to try to schedule things where I'm dealing with the public, like my classes on Mondays. For example, Friday is ruled by Venus. I have Venus in the 11th house. I like to do these live streams where we're having Mercury or Venus and Gemini type conversations on Fridays, right? So take a look. And so just to give you the days of the week, Sunday is the sun, Monday is the moon, Tuesday Mars, Wednesday Mercury, Thursday Jupiter, Friday Venus, Saturday Saturn. Okay, so take a look at your own chart and see where that might be in your chart and what topics you might want to focus on for that period of time. Okay. Okay. All right, friends, I've got an animal for you. And this animal, it's a good one. This is the jellyfish. Look at this. So the jellyfish is trying to teach us to chill out. Okay. It's saying, go with the flow. You know, how do we move through our life with the currents and the tides of our life? I'm going to read you a little bit of an excerpt from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. Jellyfish symbolizes to stop trying to force things in your life and instead go with the flow. Analyze your emotions and whether you're moving forward with purpose or drifting on the waves. Jellyfish can emit light through bioluminescent organs, which means for you to shine your light just as brightly. Jellyfish has 2 stages in its life cycle. The first is the polyp. The second is the mobile Medusa phase. So another Medusa reference. There is one species of jellyfish that is called immortal because it has the ability to revert from mobile Medusa phase back to the polyp stage during times of stress. This is an indication of rebirth, going back to the beginning and starting over again. Jellyfish can clone themselves, creating 2 new organisms if they're cut in half, or if injured, they can produce hundreds of offspring during the cloning process. This animal has a talent for remaining calm, for certainty, cheerfulness, comforting, confidence, contentment, easygoing, flexible, going with the flow, happiness, honesty, independence, joy, non-resistance, peacefulness, pleasantness, trusting, embracing uncertainty. Sometimes the challenges associated with this animal is it can be dependent. It drifts aimlessly, could be accused of being lazy or naive, sluggish, tactless, unfocused. When jellyfish appears, it's a sign to begin again. Get back to basics and find your balance. You have a need to be very adaptable. But if you make things complicated, you can slow your own progress. Jellyfish means to let things happen in their own time. Don't try to force your will on situations. Be honest and open, and don't come across as too blunt or appear tactless, even if it's unintentional. Good advice for Mercury and Mars in Sagittarius, right? Ask questions rather than make declarative statements. It says, be sensitive in your approach to attain positive results. Jellyfish means to trust your inner self. You are connected to universal wisdom. Jellyfish warns us that it's easy for us to get dehydrated. When working or enjoying being outside, make sure you stay hydrated by drinking plenty of water. It can assist you when you're stressed out, aggravated, impatient, or feeling on edge. Jellyfish can help you relax, give you patience, and take away some of the tension of your emotions. Jellyfish brings harmony and peaceful feelings if you'll listen to its message. It means to have faith in yourself during trying times. Everything will work out, especially if you're transparent in your feelings about the matter. Jellyfish relies on the ocean currents and waves to help it along and will pulsate its bell, the rounded top part, to move forward. This means that you may need to rely on the help of others to get to where you're going, but you also have the inner strength to get there on your own if you choose. You are easygoing, but also independent, so it might be hard for you to accept help. Acceptance is an integral part of jellyfish. It doesn't question, but accepts what's going on around it. You too are unafraid to accept what is and handle the difficult situations with ease and fluidity. You are a loving individual with deep emotions. Jellyfish means things are looking up in your life. So there you go. Go with the flow. Release that stress. Stay calm. Try not to get too agitated about the changes that are coming in your life. Be transparent about your feeling. Be honest about your feelings. Drift with the ocean currents. We've got these grand water trines. It's a beautiful time to just maybe enjoy some scenery, appreciate where you've been, try to take a look where you're going, but ask good questions, identify forms and beliefs that you need to compost. Sometimes that comes through getting curious about other people's perspectives and other opportunities within your life and options. Sometimes it comes through faith. Sometimes it comes through faith in the universe that is a benevolent universe. I think this is something we struggle with sometimes when we see difficult parts of a cycle, is we feel like this is going to be just the permanent situation. And when there's periods of lack, periods of hardship, periods of people exploiting other people, we feel like that's the way it's always going to be. But sometimes cycles will shift, and sometimes good will prevail. Sometimes abundance will come to spread that good fortune to those who need it at the right time. And we have to maintain our hope and our faith within that, even when we're going through these difficult changes in our society and in our belief systems. So I hope that will help you today. Thank you so much for hanging out today. We've got a few more people just with some great comments here. People like the jellyfish, right? Got the, let's see here. Yes, jellyfish, there it is. Growing up on Vancouver Island, I've had a lot of crazy encounters with them, Javier says, yes. Silent Murmur says, jellyfish look like aliens. They definitely do. Silent Murmur says, bioluminescence is called false light because its light sheds no life-giving energy. Interesting. It is very beautiful, though, isn't it? All right. Javier says, I feel like I'm a beach jelly still stuck in a tide pool. I'm waiting for the higher tide. It'll come in. Just have to have faith in those lunar tides, right? All right. Friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for continuing to be present and to show up for not only for me each week, but for each other. Thank you for all of your philosophical and intellectual contributions to the chat. I love co-creating these with you. I love the diversity of perspectives and of life experiences. And hopefully we'll continue to keep this a space where we can be ourselves, where we can agree on some things, agree to disagree on others, and have the foundation of love and care and kindness be the foundation of how we relate to each other moving forward, even in challenging times. So thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate all of you. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Silent Murmur. Thank you, Javiera. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone that participated today. Appreciate you. We will see you either next week if we figure out a topic for next week, or in 2 weeks. And keep your eyes peeled for a guest appearance that I might be doing pretty soon. I will announce that once it's recorded, and I will share it everywhere. It might be shared here in the channel. We're going to be talking a little bit about Saturn, Neptune coming up with a good friend of mine. So take care. Hang in there. Slow down. Go listen to some Billy Joel. Go put on Vienna by Billy Joel and let him give you the second opinion on it, right? Great song, beautiful song. And just lean into those feelings and emotions and let it guide you where the current wants to take you. So have a good one, friends. Be kind to yourself during these changes. Try not to beat yourself up over this. Like, when you're kind to yourself, it's so much easier to extend that kindness to others. So make sure that you're taking good care of yourself and your neighbors around this time period. All right, friends? We'll see you the next time. Peace. Have a good Halloween. Don't eat too much candy. We'll see you later.